Becky, so I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Becky.
Hello and welcome to
Dave
and Mackey's Shining Side Out on Revolution Radio for Revolution.radio. Home too hot, too loud?
Yeah.
Really? How about this? Home to ideas? No? Not good?
No, it's still square waving. It's really crazy.
Okay, I now have no more gain left. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, and it's still way too loud. It's weird.
It's like, what can I say? It makes no sense. If I'm too loud, I do apologize, but if I put the... Alright, this is now... Okay, I can't actually go any further with the game.
Alright then, that's good. But
is that good?
No, it's still square. No, let's just continue.
Okay, it's home to ideas which are fresh. And conversations which might be fresh too, but it's also a place for you to come and listen to some new ideas, hopefully. You can catch us on the air, on the line all the time, and on your smart device, so grab an app to listen anywhere, or at home on a Grace tabletop digital radio. I'll just talk more quietly, I think. Now, this is show number
686.
Yeah, that's what I thought. 686, 680 and 600. We are 14 shows away from a 700 show cycle, so that should be interesting. We're going to get the hypothesis at that point. Solaris, of course, had a great show. I missed it, though. Did you catch it, Dave?
I know who she had on.
That's helpful.
Absolutely it is. So just give me 1 second while I review my text. And though I know they were talking about DMT, Walter Rose was her guest today. And yes, they were talking about DMT.
Very good. Excellent. Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting compound. So there you go. If you missed it, it's in the archives. Another good reason, which I haven't given you any reason yet, but there are good reasons for you to donate to the station, simply because it's listener funded. There's no one else giving any money to the station ever. So if you can, please do. If you can't, that's okay. Tell people about the station. But another good reason, though, to do that is because the archives are free, completely free. Go in there, do what you like, listen to your heart's content, and no one is going to charge you. But donations are appreciated. Any kind of currency is good, including crypto. So if you can do that, that would be fantastic. Before we start broadcasting at you in anger, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we broadcast. And for Dave,
it is the Darkinjung.
Darkinjung, and for myself, of course, the Dark People. And we'd like to pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. Thank you. Speaking of respect, my friend, Mr. Albanese was returned to his prime ministership last night with a massive landslide of a vote. He's got a full majority. Now, this is only interesting, I guess, for Australian listeners. But it's interesting, though, is this. The Liberals had a bit of a bumpy campaign, flip-flopping on a few issues. But I think Dutton initially made the mistake of styling himself along Trump lines. And because of the tariffs and a whole bunch of other stuff, that sort of came to bite him, right? And I think that wasn't the only factor, but I think it was a pretty big factor in him not getting elected. He actually lost his seat.
That's right. That's a lot of not getting elected.
It's like, oh no, we don't want you specifically. That's who we don't want. Oh, come on, guys.
Even for a prime minister who it's a party system, we didn't want him.
Yeah. It's like, wow. Now, so the thing is, normally what can happen, of course he loses the party. In Australia, the way it works, you vote for a party, right? Liberal, Labour, or hopefully someone independent. I don't mind telling everyone I vote independent, mostly, unless they're no good independent candidates. But so you vote for the party. And usually the party is led by a person, and that person, if they win the election, becomes then the prime minister, right? Now, if you lose the election, chances are that you're no longer the leader of the party, right? But you can remain in parliament if you win your seat, because you're still a member of parliament. It's fine, right? But in this case, Mr. Dutton, he lost his seat. He lost his seat. That's actually quite unusual. I don't remember the last time an opposition leader or prime minister in an election, in a federal election, lost their seat. I can't remember the last time that happened. Did Scott Morrison lose his seat?
No.
I think he just retired, right?
Yeah, that's right.
No, that can happen, of course. But
It's
yeah,
gotta eat at you.
Oh, brother,
Let's say that.
Doesn't it ever?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, is this good for Australia or bad? Well, it's not catastrophic, I want to say. It will set back the nuclear agenda probably by 10 years.
Decade, yeah, easy. So let's start by saying, Wade, what were the main policies that their party was putting forward? So the world won't have any visibility of that, but because we've tried to turn off, sold our power production and rented out our power lines, our power here in Australia has a really big push, very hard push, into renewables. The party that's been in and the direction, all of the, let's call it Kool-Aid, if you will, for being carbon free. The renewables energy market has huge advantages for being in this country. There's a lot of let's call it funding that goes towards them from the government to stand it up, to make it work. The opposition party, the one that just didn't get up today or yesterday, they wanted to replace the coal with, eventually, but with nuclear power. The fear that was perpetrated by the winning party, that it was going to cost so much, it was going to cost not only, because it's all taxpayer money, and one would be Medicare. They'd have to cut that, cut what you can claim on Medicare, so cut their outgoing to $600 million, or whatever the price was. I forget how much. It was a lot of money. Anyway, that's not a very large amount of money, but the real cost to nuclear would be small micro nuclear plants that can't even go into meltdown. And the fear factor of all of this for that's a big lose for this country. So we have tons of, we have so much coal that we could live forever, almost, indefinitely, just burning our coal for power. We could. We sell most of it, but we have so much coal in Australia that it isn't funny. And it's a shame to see us moving away from it. And we've talked about the carbon budget in the past. So it's almost a non-argument. Yes, nuclear would be fantastic. Why don't we do that? And the fear factors, Chernobyl, yeah, or Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island. You think about all these things that have occurred in the past, and it's too dirty, and for 250,000 years it's got a half-life. And so does that win? Does that win you an election? No, it helps you lose an election by claiming that it's the right way forward. The fear that was perpetrated in the advertising against doing it, he couldn't defend himself really well in those 4. I think he did a really, really poor job, Mackie, in the 4 debates. He didn't even agree that climate change was real. He couldn't stand on climate change. Not even make a stance. He said, scientists, blah, 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 and then tape it off and never answer the question.
I tell you what, Dave, when I was watching the whole thing unfold, right, now in Australia, the latest you can run the election is pretty much now, end of May, right? This is pretty much the latest you can actually run it. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the election is called early. If the sitting prime minister thinks he's in a good position to win, or she, then they might do that, and then win an extended term at the time of their choosing. But this, it felt like as though the Liberals were surprised. The election is coming. Oops! It was like, it's almost like, hey, is that happening? And we know, because when it's what? Because it was postponed. There was an event which prevented us from doing it earlier, right? and all of a
that's
sudden,
true. Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden it's sort of pushed back, and now we know it has to be May. We know it's May, right? So it's not like this is a huge surprise to anyone. And look, in my opinion, the Liberals were, or seemed, caught off guard. It can't be true, of course.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, and Dave alluded to that, is there was a bit of flip-flopping on certain policies. The Dutton, the Dutton administration, you can call them, or the never-to-be Dutton administration, decided
the name is LNP, so it's Liberal and National Party Coalition.
Yeah, that's right. Coalition, that's right. Now, they wanted to lay off 40,000 federal workers, just like Trump is laying off millions of federal workers in the US now.
Yeah.
40,000 doesn't seem like much, but you have to understand that the population of Australia is 26 million. That's about, greater New York. So
a tenth of what the goal was in the US.
Yeah. 100%. And, a tenth of the population as well. So, but then, that didn't go down well with the federal workers. And so he goes, oh, no, we're not going to do that now. We're just going to have natural attrition. Oh, okay. And then he said, you all have to come back to the office. And they didn't like that either. Okay, we're not going to do that now. And it's always been the plan.
That was his backflip. Yeah, so
always been the plan.
So the argument that I thought was interesting when he said you have to come back to the office, immediately the female employees took it up as a sex issue. You're being sexist because we now have the ability to do all of our regular duties. The kids drop off, the cleaning, the cooking, and everything like that. Mm-hmm. Which is actually the most beautiful work-life balance that humanity has been able to wrestle from industry, is a hybrid approach, not dedicated working from home, although that has existed for some time. People working from their homes is either now an architecture business, whatever it happens to be. Could be IT, doesn't matter what it is. We're now in a position to be able to almost entirely work from home, as long as those persons, Meki, and I know you know this answer here, but I'll allow you to take it, and that is any remote workers from your business, whether it's in country or remote or overseas, it doesn't matter. You still need to manage those persons and ensure the work is getting processed. And so any company who has now, they have high rents for the buildings and all the office space that they consume, sitting there idle, was one of their biggest complaints during, nearing the end of COVID. And how do we justify having all of this space now as a business if we're not using it? How can we claim it? We'd have to increase our workforce tenfold or 100-fold to be able to then consume it in this hybrid existence. A lot of companies, one that I was working for, decided to sublet the unused space, contracting the space that they then were leasing down. Well, they leased the whole lot, but contracted out, contracting what they were using of it. And so they could, make it some coin off it, and it wasn't a loss. But the amount of work processed by your staff, whether on-prem or remote or overseas, is a management issue. And look, if they say that it makes it, the staff more, that they adhere together, they mesh, they're working, they're a unit together, if they're in the office. The question that we've raised, Meki and I have talked about this a lot, is, does that change so much? Or is it the fact that people talk around the water cooler and become even more inefficient because they're in the office? They go for lunch more. They are social. I'm going to admit, more social. But I found that when the call came back to the office, that very few people really did it. They did it so infrequently that it was on the off day when there was almost no one in the office. And they weren't getting the work done like they were when we were all in the office or when we were all at home. There seemed to be this weird thing where we found we were compulsed to become social with these workmates rather than busy. So what's your take on that, Mackie? Because it was a big failure to be able to make that call in advance of becoming elected.
No, look, and that's fundamental. Look, it all depends on the nature of your job, right? My team is about 100 people, right? And they're across the region. When I say region, I mean India, China, Malaysia, Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, I think, and yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, and anyway, 100 people peppered across the region. If your job allows you, if you've got a function where it doesn't matter where you are, lucky you. I say lucky you.
Yeah.
Some people have to go to work, and that's just how it is, right? And that's unfortunate, but a lot of people that work with, I guess, at the desk behind a computer screen, it doesn't really matter where you are. Not really.
But frontline workers who have to deal with the public directly.
100%.
Got to be in
100%.
Yeah.
Now, you actually outlined all the arguments. So the first argument that is brought forward is, and this is not the most important one, but it's always the one that they lead with, is there's a synergy when you go to the office. Now, that's true. I'm not saying that isn't true, but that only works if everybody goes back to the office. So we have that mandate for our company. We go back, and I go back into the office, and I'm not the only one there, but I might as well be. There's no one there I want to talk to. It's not none of the people that I need to. And like I said, the vast majority of my team, the vast majority is not physically near me, right? They're in other countries, in fact. But there is something to be gained by being in the same office. So, there's an effort for people to come in, once or twice, 3 times a week, things like that. That's a good thing. But the most important thing, the one you led with, was the cost. There's a cost to this office space. Now, funnily enough, my company is an American company, right? And we are feeling the pain from the Trump decisions, especially in Europe, funnily enough. But in America, there are no offices. They're completely gone. There are no longer any offices, and everybody's a remote worker. So even if they wanted to, they couldn't go back.
Oh, wow.
Whereas in Australia, sorry?
Oh, wow, I said.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, it's a huge cost saving. Whereas in Australia, we've retained offices in all the capital cities, right? Fairly large offices too. So that's a cost. So, just having it sit there is doesn't obviously sit well with the C-level management, which is fair enough too. So it's a good thing to come to the office from that point of view. Or maybe, some people come to the office because they can work better there, right? Some people choose to come to the office because there's no distraction. They feel like this is the place where they can work the best. And that's good too. But these days, and moving into the future, and this is really where this is going, we are going to see a workplace that is going to change significantly. Work used to be a place you go to, right? And for some people it still is. But now, for a lot of us in office jobs, work is something you do, irrespective of where you are, right? And it no longer matters if you go here, you go there, you go anywhere. It doesn't matter, not really anymore. And going forward, the office space question will become even more significant. And you know why? Because of AI.
Yeah.
Because the headcount reduction that we will see across the board in all industries, all sectors, is going to be significant. Right? We downplay it. No. Let's be clear. There will be significant headcount reductions. At which point, companies will really have to ask themselves, well, do I really need an office? What we have an office in the city of Sydney specifically to meet with customers and salespeople, etc. So it's a nice kind of floor, like bit flashy, and will be rented. But that's the kind of thing I can see in the future where companies will have a physical location where they could meet customers. You could have a face-to-face, things like that, like Telstra shop fronts, Samsung shop fronts, things like that, Apple shop fronts, right? Where you have, you could buy all the stuff online, right? But people like the touchy-feely. They like to go in, talk to the expert, etc., etc. That's still a thing. that'll die off as the Gen Xers like Dave and I retire and die. It'll become a thing of the past. But companies will have to look at reducing office space, which will lead to a repurposing, in my opinion, of the CBDs of the world.
Yes.
The CBDs of the world will no longer business center. They will no longer be business centers. They will be
a residential and shopping. That's right.
100%. And in fact, in Sydney, George Street, which was one of the busiest streets in Sydney, is now from look, if you know Sydney, from Central Station almost all the way to Circular Quay is pretty much a pedestrian area. Like,
that's right.
Completely unthinkable when I came to Australia. There's a tram running the length of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
But there we are. I mean, we have it. This is it. This is what actually happened.
Shared space, a pedestrian mall and a tram. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are restaurants and heaps of foot traffic, much more than there was before. And I can see other CBDs moving in the same direction, where the arterial roads aren't necessary anymore, right? Because people really aren't going to work in the cities anymore, right? And in fact, what we've seen in Australia, Dave knows as well, we saw migration from the cities to the countryside. Because the thing is, well, this was COVID, of course, the great accelerator. Why do I have to live here? And I'm at home anyway. I can't go to the office. I'm actually not allowed to go to the office, right?
That's
so I have to work from home. And then it doesn't matter where I am. So a lot of people move to the countryside, which is cheaper. The houses are cheaper. General life is cheaper. Or maybe near the beach or whatever. And that was a huge move.
Yeah. And also...
I mean, you yourself are away from the city, right?
I am. I'm on the... You could call it the outskirts of the city. I live between two cities. A rose between two thorns. So I'm going to say, or was it between two ferns? I don't know what it is. Between Two Ferns is a YouTube channel. It's actually pretty funny. But yes, that's where I live. But you think about some benefits also living in a small rural community where your travel to do anything is minimized. You don't really have to go very far. I know that if you have to travel across some of Sydney's major arterial roads, like Parramatta Road, for instance, or go a length of anything, it's even on the weekend. In fact, on the weekend, it's worse because there's people who don't normally commute and just don't drive like regular people. They drive really like inappropriately, changing lanes all the time, trying to get somewhere, and they don't get anywhere. In the commute, people usually stick a lane and they know where they're going. They stay in the lane for the most part of the entire journey, the majority of it, because it's the easiest thing. You do it all the time. And anyway, so in the country, you might only have one very short street, not even 100 yards long, full of shops, that's only for what you really need. And they're all local outlets, and there you go. So your fuel usage is also cheaper for some reason. When you get over the Great Dividing Range, the petrol is cheaper. I think the rents are cheaper, or the properties don't have a lot of leasing costs. The staffing cost is less. I'm not sure what it is, maybe they're just not gouging us as hard, right? So yeah, there's that as well. And look, you think about the infrastructure cost of having to allow the movement of millions of people twice a day to and from work. That infrastructure, the fuel cost, you think about it. I can see the reason why 15-minute cities are really popular from the WEF's perspective. I'm not supporting it. I'm saying that I can see why that is of interest. But if you're going to go into an election in Australia, I'd say next time, shut up. Say nothing. Because at the moment, I think this election saw, like we saw in Trump versus Biden, anyone but Trump vote was really strong.
Same, you're right. I know where you're going. You're right.
And this time, it was anyone but Dutton.
Yeah.
Because he had a nickname on the internet, or in talking about him, as Voldemort. He kind of looked like Voldemort. He's an ex-police officer from Queensland, and I would imagine him to be an honest, reputable person. But when you make a statement, because it was successful, that working group that decided the policies, that they must not have tested well, or they tested well within their extreme right, little group they had. It wasn't a generalized group. They didn't have, a huge community centre full of all the people there. Or they were just people just wanting to get paid their $20 for the survey. I don't know. But it concerns me that these ideas that were extremely successful in the US, and that what Trump stood on to get his win, failed miserably here. Maybe he couldn't talk to it. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he failed to have that presence. Even like him or hate him, I think Trump sold that idea pretty well, but it's not compulsory voting, to be honest, in the US. So
yeah, it is.
Here it absolutely is. We had 98.2% of people who should have enrolled to vote. We have that many people of the 100%, 98.2, who are enrolled to vote, and I think who did vote. Because there's a fine if you don't vote, but how they know that you voted, I don't know. That's pretty hard. When you have to mark your name off, you don't have to provide ID, as long as you can prove that you're one of the persons on the roll. They just cross it out, which kind of irks me as well, to be honest. You should provide photographic proof that this is who you are. Or let's go to direct democracy, so you just use the app and do it online. One of the big things that's already been spoken about in Australia is the warehouse full of votes. That's my terminology for any kind of voter fraud. I'm not saying there was. There's some people talking about it, and it disturbs me because they lost so greatly. And I think it's the biggest Liberal loss in the history of their party. If they didn't have a coalition between the Liberal Party and the National Party, which is basically like cities and country in that order, the National Party members are least likely to believe in climate change, hence Peter Dutton's position on climate change. Even though he wanted to have a policy that was to put nuclear power in to reduce carbon. Who was that for? Big industry. That I wasn't doing that for the climate. So, because he couldn't answer those questions, I think he failed. And that's my belief. The anyone but Dutton is quite a possibility, Mackie. But what else was there besides getting the women in the public service upset? I don't know how many other policies there were.
No, I think nuclear was a divisive issue. I think it was.
Because we're nuclear free, except for the submarines.
Yeah, correct. So there was a bit divisive. And, he also said that he was going to... Well, one thing that he said is going to bring in a reduction for 1 year in the fuel excise, which would make it like 25-30 cents cheaper immediately at the Bowser.
Yeah,
so
but
all the fuel
I reckon... What do you think the truth of that would happen? What do you think would actually happen?
Yeah, look...
I think honestly, the profits would go up at the Bowser, whoever owned the company.
Yeah, that's a hoot. All the Bowser operators are
more margin.
What really was a problem though, it was his budget, right? So he said he would make 40,000, or he would get rid of 40,000 government employees. Now that's a big chunk of cash, right?
Yeah.
It could be, that would have paid for a whole bunch of stuff that he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So his budget didn't balance anymore, right? He said, so I don't have those billions anymore, but it'll work. It'll be attrition. We can still do it. Come on.
We can work with those numbers. Surely.
Just do it, Bob. Come on, Bob. Yeah, no. Okay, there was a number of things. Do I think the election was rigged? No, I don't think so.
No.
I'm actually in Bowen's, Chris Bowen's electorate.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
my wife saw him yesterday at the markets and with my daughter when they were doing something. I can't remember doing something. And he was, around shaking hands, this and that. And the Bowen contingent in my obviously electorate is very, very strong. So that's a safe seat for Labour.
So is my seat. I met Dr. Gordon Reid, and I also met the father of the opposition. That was Lucy Wicks. I met her father the other day. I'm not saying that
Did they give you a job?
No,
Did you tell them
neither
that
of them.
Bastards.
Yeah, I know.
Bastards.
I'll wash the car as long as I don't have to, do anything terrible.
For $50,000, I'll wash your car. No problem. Hey, come on.
Not just once.
It's true. But yeah, look, it was a many layered failure on the Liberals. It was in some ways similar to what happened in Canada.
Yeah.
Where the guy who actually won, I don't know if you watched him. I forget his name, but he's an ex-banker. He's a banker, right? He's never been in an elective office in his life, and it was his victory party. And he was, I don't know if you've ever watched Microsoft training videos, okay, in the olden days.
Yes.
They will drive you to suicide. Okay, they will. It's just what it is. It's just how it is. It's just how they were made. Okay, he was talking like that at his victory party, like how we won. There's a lady, and he was saying something like, "Oh, the future is ours," and the lady goes, "Yeah, because you will lead us to it," from the audience.
Yes.
And he kind of scowled and looked at her disapprovingly. How dare you, make a ruckus at the victory party? This wasn't approved. So he's not the most inspiring, is my point, of individuals, right? But he won because the other guy, though he tried to distance himself from Trump and the policies, once it became clear what Trump was doing to Canada, was too late. And it was so the vote went to the sitting party of which Trudeau had just resigned. And he stepped in, and nobody expected him to win. He didn't expect to win, essentially, right? No, I'm serious. Whereas, of course, here in Australia, it's slightly different. But again, Trump was a factor in both of those elections, and a significant factor, I want to say, right? Not really in his favor, right?
Oh,
so Donald Trump, because the people that were elected are not pro-Trumpers; they're the opposite. Which is interesting. So there's this international almost consensus, except for Russia, that Trump is terrible, it's really interesting to see it all unfold, where the people outside of the U.S. are now sort of coming together. Interestingly, Europe, Canada. I mean, we have to reevaluate where we live, right? I mean, our biggest trading partner is China. You can stand on your head and hate it. Our biggest trading partner in Australia is China. It's just the way it is, right? So that relationship is important for us. The American trade relationship, honestly, not that important. They don't like our beef? Okay, all right. But that means you won't get any good hamburgers anymore, right? So
they do like our beef.
They love our beef.
They're just upset that we won't take. Well, Trump is upset that we won't take theirs. But if ours is so
there's
good,
a reason,
what
right?
are we doing? Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Biosecurity. Yeah.
Well, no, actually, because they can't guarantee it's US beef, right? It gets mixed with Canadian or Mexican beef, and then that's what we get.
And also, there's chemicals in it.
Yeah, that's right. But either way, we take it. If they could guarantee it's American or US beef, then we would take it.
Sure.
That was the condition, but they can't, so we don't. But yeah, they've got an app now in France.
Awesome.
App.
What's the app do?
So there's barcodes and QR codes and all kinds of things on products. Okay.
Yeah.
So the app on your mobile will read whatever product you have. As a product here, and you read the barcode, beep beep, and it will tell you if the product is made in America, or if the company that is making the product is owned by an American entity.
Wow.
So people go into the supermarket with this app, and there was a guy, he was shopping, he's going, so he bought Orangeade. Orangeade, is that what it's called?
Okay, sure. Mm-hmm.
Orangina, instead of Fanta. He bought Orangina instead of Fanta.
Oh.
Because Fanta is obviously American. There are a few other things as well. Some might surprise you. Oh, this is an American company, I'm going to buy that. So there's a huge consumer backlash. In fact, in Canada, as you know, they have taken American products off the shelves, especially alcohol. Completely off the shelves. Whiskey, I mean, this is actually hurting the bourbon producers in Kentucky and elsewhere. There was a report that I watched. Very interesting. Canadians drink a lot. They drink a lot. And funnily enough, in Canada, there's one entity that buys all the alcohol for Canada. So you can imagine a fairly powerful, purchasing entity. And they were the biggest consumers of American alcohol from a purchasing point of view.
Okay.
And they stopped. They stopped buying American alcohol. So that's not good for the American alcohol, right? It's really interesting
I like
how
my alcohol in plastic bottles.
Yeah. Donald Trump recently said that there might be some kind of fallout and children might have 2 dolls instead of 30. He actually said that. What he meant was, look, yes, there may not be as many toys in the shops for Christmas as we're used to, so we all have to just make do with what's there. Of course, that's true, because
in a land of consumerism and choice, that wasn't a good thing to say.
No, especially for Republicans, right?
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, because Republicans are free trade, it's the Democrats that love tariffs, which is funny, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you have to understand, Donald Trump was a Democrat for the longest time until he joined the Republican Party to run for president. No, but the toys that you purchase, and this goes pretty much for any country in the world, that you purchase at Christmas, they're being ordered now.
Yeah.
Or have already been ordered, and they're being manufactured over the next few months. Because you can imagine, globally, they have to make millions of whatever it is they're making, right? And they have to ship it elsewhere, and if it's by container, it can take months to ship wherever it needs to go, right? Clear customs, then they have to be transported to distribution centers, has to go into the shelves from the stores. And by the time, it actually happens, it seems like it's instantaneous. It's not. It takes months and months of logistics to get whatever it is on the shelves. And apparently, the first impact on shelves in the States we should be seeing by the end of May, which should be interesting. Now, no one else is impacted because in Australia here, we did not reciprocate any tariffs. We didn't put anything on American goods, which is good because some of the crisps are made in the States. So I'm not going to pay $20 for a packet of crisps, I can tell you that. So, but there's some really good cheeses that I made in America, which I like. I like cheese. So we haven't done that. So it's not impacting us. It'll impact the Americans. The Europeans, they're not tit for tatting it either. China has. But you have to ask yourself, what is China buying from America and what's America buying from China? I watched a very interesting documentary a couple of years ago. In the olden days, China wasn't very rich, so they didn't really purchase terribly much from America, right? I mean, and it was not really much of a. I mean, right now the trade relationship is not too bad, but again, Americans buy more Chinese stuff than Chinese buy American stuff. But what they buy is important to understand. Americans buy a lot of cheap Chinese goods because they're cheap. That's why they're buying them, right?
That's right.
Consumer goods, anything, could be anything, right? And there's a lot of it that goes into America. The Chinese, now experiencing prosperity now for the last couple of decades, with the middle class growing and more people becoming quite wealthy, they are buying high-end American goods.
That's right.
Such as furniture and like handmade products. So while it might be a smaller volume, but these are high-end goods that the Chinese import. They're also now the single largest purchaser of wine in the world, any country, the Chinese. And because for them, the red wine is just like a status symbol, right? And the one thing that Trump completely screwed up on. Am I against tariffs? Principally, no. If you're protecting industry, I think it's a good mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
The way it was applied here without any plan, that was probably a mistake. But the one thing, and this is the most important thing in this whole schlamazel, and nobody's talking about it, Dave. So we're going to be talking about this for the first time here. I've mentioned it before. The single most important thing in the Chinese culture and in many Asian cultures is face,
Mm-hmm.
which means respect and not being embarrassed and being able to, even if it's completely false, maintain a level of a modicum of respect and respectability. To take away face by either embarrassing someone or treating them poorly or in an offhand manner or advanced it, calling all the Chinese peasants, etc., or Trump saying, "Oh, the Chinese will come, they have to trade with us. We're the pot of gold."
It's
That's
about,
disrespectful.
and airing your grief publicly. All of those things are really
Correct.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when Donald Trump went to this dinner, it was some dinner, and this was actually broadcast, so I know it's true. He said, "Oh, these countries are calling me, and they all want to make deals. They all want to kiss my ass." You don't say that, because China will now never come and call you.
That's right.
Never. So face is really important in the Asian culture. I'm not sure that Trump or his administration understand that, because everything if they had done to Zelensky, sorry, to
Xi, like they
to
did
Xi.
to, yeah, that's right.
Zelensky, we'd now be at war.
That's right. Totally.
If they had embarrassed him in the Oval Office as they embarrassed Zelensky, that would be completely unthinkable. And that's probably one of the reasons why the Chinese are not contacting Trump. They don't want to give him any ammunition to embarrass them, to lose face. To lose face in the Asian culture is unthinkable, especially at that level. You can't afford it. You lose face, you're done. Okay? This might sound extremely archaic, but it's what it is. In the West, we don't understand that. Donald Trump, who doesn't have a filter and says whatever comes to his head, doesn't understand that. But then you would think his foreign advisors, or some sub-advisor or someone in there that has some idea of what's going on in the world should tell him, well, these are the cultural norms of the people we deal with. Not everybody reacts or acts like an American. When I worked in Asia quite a bit, generally speaking, I was working in Hong Kong and KL and Singapore mostly. But the sentiment was this: nobody liked the Americans. They were too loud, and they never really bought a round of drinks, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So they just wouldn't do it, right?
Un-Australian.
The British were suffered. I mean, they were not as hated as the Americans, but the British lost all credibility after the fall of Singapore. All of it gone, right? The Aussies, for the most part, are quite well liked, right? Because yes, we're blunt but honest and never underhanded and respectful. Aussies are for the most part respectful. Most Europeans are good as well because they understand, because they are in a multicultural environment. It's not a monoculture in Europe. It's like many different cultures that have to get along, so they understand some of the finer points. But this is the biggest point, Dave. The complete lack of understanding that you can't embarrass the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it. But I haven't heard anyone talk about it. Not a single person.
Yeah. Look, I'm with you. Diplomacy is not on their agenda. The gentleman's club that has existed for 100 years, at least. It's been interrupted, but at least the trade, the diplomacy, there's certainly a disruptor in the group, and it's the US at the moment. All of those things that have occurred could have occurred behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Not been aired publicly. And this is
Exactly.
This is for everybody. So the US has just come in and just shut all the doors and all the windows and go, you know what, good luck with that. and you want to do business with us, you need to talk to us because we want free trade for our people. We don't like the way that you've been dealing with us, or thereabouts, or comments to the similar effect. Look, it's disappointing that it's happened, but certainly it's going to go down in the history books as either being a tremendous success or a complete failure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know which, because we haven't seen the outcome of it all. Certainly it's rattled everybody's cages.
Yeah.
And it's also, I'm going to say this, and you know this, Meki, and I know that our audience does, but just for the record, it has created new alliances.
100%. Yes, sir. You're right.
It's the same as the petrodollar, the destruction of the petrodollar, and banning countries from using it has established new connections. The petrodollar was great for such a long time for the US, not for everybody else. Did it give everyone else some modicum of security or stability? Might have, because we don't know what the alternative was. That's like any true regime or system. We'll never know its true effect. We can measure things that might suggest that it was working perfectly. But was it? Did it provide success everywhere? It doesn't matter what it is. If you've got something in your business that you established and it's fantastic, have you evaluated what happens if you don't do it or you change it? That's what happens every time there's a new CEO at a company. They'll change up everything the way they like it. And is it for the best? Don't know. We'll only find out when it changes again, or if it is better than the previous people, it doesn't mean it's the best way of doing it either. So, I see the way Trump has been running this is like a business, trying to operate the US as a business. If you're able to remove unnecessary spending, was it the right way of going about it? Very publicly. Again, big disruptor. And if he does everything publicly, does that show transparency? No, it doesn't. That's my answer. Right? It just
I agree with you.
It just says this is what I'm showing you what we're doing. And it's an appearance of transparency. But
you're right. Go on.
But I don't see it. So in all those redacted forms, I'm going to release all the documents. Oh, great. But they're all redacted. They're so redacted, you can't read them. There's no words on the page that make any difference. There's only and, if, and or.
But it's a significant if. Why put the if there? But what Dave is saying is correct. And the precedent has been set on a number of fronts here. So Donald Trump, as I said, doesn't have a filter. He'll just say whatever, and he says it in front of the cameras with his guests there. I mean, what happened with Zelensky and that berating almost that you got from JD Vance,
terrible,
completely unprofessional. I mean, I was just cringing, and it didn't reflect on Zelensky. It reflected on Vance and Trump. Secondly,
yeah,
the signal.
He was a guest.
So he was a guest, but then you had Hexet and Waltz. In fact, there was one signal gate incident, but there were more than one.
That's right.
So now Michael Waltz has now been removed and is now going to be put forward as UN ambassador. And
he gets a remote posting.
Yeah, gets Siberia. I don't think that Hexet is long for this world because he had another group.
Yes.
Of 27 odd people or whatever it was.
That's right.
With his lawyer and his wife.
That's
I don't know why he have his lawyer there, but whatever. This is... But see, our allies... Sorry, your allies, I shouldn't say our. Your allies, the American allies, are now looking at America and going, I'm not going to tell you my secrets. I'm not going to come and sit with you, even if the doors are closed, because that guy is going to blab, and that guy is going to blab,
That's right.
and you have no filter. So it's like, what? It's like, I had this boss.
Oh,
And
he read this on the internet. It's a story he's reading about the internet. Clearly.
no, this happened. And I don't care.
Help!
And I had this boss, and I'm in fairly senior management, right? So there's a lot of things being discussed, and this boss would go, it can't be a leak. We can't tell anyone about it. Yeah, sure, okay, no worries. And no one did, except for the boss. He would tell everybody. He was the worst leak. He was hilarious. It's true. It's what happened, right? But none of the other people in the group would utter a word, but it would somehow find its way out. And then we found out, though, that it was actually our boss who would, whatever. But the point is this, right? America has proven now, or sorry, I should say the administration has proven that the friends and allies of America, such as they are, and such as they still exist, cannot trust the administration anymore. It's a really sad state of affairs because it took 80 years.
Yeah.
80 years to build that up into something. Was it perfect? No. Does the UN reflect a reality? No. Does NATO need a kick up the what in order to do change? Yes. Yeah, the clacker. Does the EU need a kick somewhere? Yes. So I'm not saying these institutions or treaties or organizations are perfect, but not by a long shot. But they were stable. They can always be improved, and they should. It should have been an evolutionary improvement rather than a revolutionary disaster, which is what we have now. The Americans have taught the world in 100 days, in a short 100 days, that America can no longer be trusted to look out for their friends and allies.
Yeah.
That's the key thing Trump has accomplished in foreign policy, and all on the back of some misguided attempt to shift the trade balance in America's favor. If America is the strongest economy in the world, I don't think anybody would argue. California is the 5th strongest economy in the world by itself. Right? So you take California out, and all of a sudden America isn't so impressive anymore. But my point is this. It is the strongest economy. It makes a lot of stuff. It actually does make a lot of stuff. It does. A lot. Right? KitchenAid. All the stuff I buy. My clothes.
Oh, I love the KitchenAid
Yeah, right?
brand. Yep.
This is American made. Why? Because it's quality. I like it. I buy it, right?
It's something you can hand down to your children.
100%.
I know.
But a trade deficit is not indicative of a bad economy or a bad trading relationship. A trade deficit only means that your population, which is cashed up, which the Americans are cashed up, relatively speaking, are able to buy more stuff from someone else.
That's right.
You don't like that? Then tell them to stop buying more stuff from somewhere else. Stop, right? Because the Americans created the cheap labor places in the world.
That's right.
The corporations went where it was cheapest. It was created by the American corporations. Globalization is an American creation.
That's right.
Frankenstein, if you will. I don't like it. I think it's terrible. But here we are. And now, in the space of 100 years, you're trying to change that? This will take decades to change. You have to build factories, change supply chains, secure resources, train people to work in the factories, relocate. Sorry, the Chinese Apple factory is moving to Ohio. No, India. It's going to India, not Ohio. Okay, or Nebraska or whatever. Okay, to escape the tariffs. I said this, Dave. They're gonna leave China, yes, but they're not going back to America. They're going to the next cheapest country. Thank you very much. Labor loss? No. Hurrah! All right, that's all I have.
All right, so I'm going to ask everyone, thank you. This is the end of the first hour. Hold on tight. We'll be coming back after the break to discuss, I think it's Mind Control Part 9, I believe. Anyway, do like, share, subscribe, and comment on all of our platforms. Particularly subscribe. I want to see more subscribers, please. Share it with your friends and tell them where you hear it. And you're able to do clips and share it out there as long as you brand it for us. All right. And we'll see you after the short break. Take care.